Hello, humans. How many of you have this weird, nagging feeling that there is a mistake in some admissions process somewhere, and you got in here by accident? Hands? Hands? Be honest. Have a look around. How many people are raising their hands? Even not that high, there's quite a few people raising their hands. If you think about it, that's a pretty bad admissions office if they let all of you in by accident, yes? The people doing admissions, not so good at admissions. So I felt like this right here in Urbana, Illinois, and this is why I have returned to the scene of the crime. The year was 2008. I was a brand new engineering manager at Microsoft, brand new, and my first job was to hire a team. Sure, no problem. I was sent here by my company to interview students and choose software engineers to bring back to Microsoft. I got this. I've interviewed lots of students. Hell, I've even been a student. No problem. Show up here, and the first thing I get told is, oh, Donna, you're here. This is wonderful. I know your interviews are in the morning, but tonight, would you mind giving a Meet the Company presentation to a room full of students? And I said, a what? And they said, a Meet the Company presentation. You get up on a stage in front of a room full of people, and you say words about what your company does. And I said, no, I can't do that. No, I've never done this in my life. Why would I do such a thing? And they said, Donna, we already told the students you're going to do this. And I said, oh, okay. Then I did what any mature adult would do in this situation. I ran. I ran away. I ran up the stairs, out the door, and I ran to this water tower, which all of you know very well, and I hid. This is January. It is cold here. There's a lot of snow under the water tower. So I burrowed like a polar bear. I'm going to stay here now forever. Wait out the humiliation. Why? Why am I feeling this way? Well, namely because there's this voice inside me that's telling me, Donna Sarkar, there is no way are you qualified to give a talk to students about working at a company. There's absolutely nothing you know about this topic of going from student to engineer. You know nothing about Microsoft. There's going to be a room full of people. Someone's going to point to you and say, you don't know what you're doing. I was absolutely convinced this is going to happen. So I refused to go back. And I'm just hanging out under the water tower, maybe violently ill. And suddenly, the student organizer realizes, the pizza's here, the students are here, no speaker. Speaker is not here. So I get a call from the recruiting team, and they say, Donna, everyone's waiting for you. And I said, yeah, that's nice, that's cool. No one warned me about this talk thing, so I don't think I can do the talk thing. I'm very busy, extremely busy schedule. Here in Urbana-Champaign, schedule is packed. And the recruiter says, Donna Sarkar, you think of the students. Think of the children. You're going to let down the children? Now we're not going to hire anyone from Urbana-Champaign, one of the best engineering schools in the country, potentially the world, am I right? Yeah. We're not going to hire anyone because of you. And I said, oh, well, that's no good. So I pry myself out of the water tower. I wander back, slink back onto the stage, get a mic, violently shaking, and I give a presentation on Microsoft. And you know what happened? We had 100 students sign up just from this session. And the feedback, the most common feedback was, Donna being so nervous about this and relaying her water tower incident, which I did, made us realize that we don't actually need to know everything and be perfect to work at Microsoft. The fact that Donna's a work in progress makes us feel like we too can be a work in progress. I'm like, failure as a service. This is amazing. I've dreamt about this my whole life. So at that moment, I became known as being relatable. Oh, Donna, you're just so relatable. You're so good at, being so normal. I'm like, is this good? Oh, it's good. Okay. So then recruiting said, you know what? You did so good at that. We want you to do this every week. And I said, oh, why would you do this to me? And they said, we want you to be the queen of the I states and the square states. We want you to go to every school this winter that starts with an I or is a square. Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, Wyoming, Kansas, Nebraska, in January. So I did 10 schools in January and February, giving the same Meet the Company talk, only fled a few times. And you know what? At the end of it, I stopped being worried that someone would point to me and say, you don't belong here, because no one did. Because no one did. So, weird situation. I went back home to Seattle, Washington. I talked to my very, very successful mentor, Sangeeta. Sangeeta works on the Excel team. She actually leads the Excel team. Who knows what Excel is? Yeah, it runs Wall Street. And this is my mentor. You see why I'm imposter? So I explained the situation to her, and she laughs at me. I got no sympathy. She laughed at me and said, this is the most normal thing in the world. And I said, now you're just lying. And she says, no, Donna, I lead Excel. I don't know anything about finances. I've never worked in banking. Someone asked me to make a pivot table the other day, and I said, what's that? She said, everyone has it. Go do some research. And I said, I will do some research to prove you wrong, mentor. So I did some research. It turns out it's an epidemic. It turns out it's an epidemic that's global. Sheryl Sandberg, Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, she announced at Grace Hopper in front of 18,000 people she is completely unqualified to be at Grace Hopper or to work at Facebook because she does not have a computer science degree. Who does she think she is? Seth Godin, marketing maven, has written 19 bestsellers on marketing. He's the one who invented the concept of tribes. And he wrote, every book I write, I'm convinced some editor will say, you don't know anything about marketing. Why are you writing these books? He's convinced after 19 bestsellers. Howard Schultz, politics aside, dude started Starbucks. How many of y'all have been to Starbucks? Yep. He comes from a low-income neighborhood in New Jersey, was a Xerox salesman. And one day, he found this independent coffee shop on a trip to Italy for work and said, why don't we have these in the US? And he brought the idea to the US. And he said, every day he felt like an imposter, because what does a photocopy salesman know about starting a coffee company, a global billion-dollar coffee company? But my greatest imposter story of all is of the first man on the moon. A few years ago, Neil Armstrong is at a party where he is being honored, and he starts talking to Neil Gaiman, the fantasy author. And the Neils get to talking about how great it is to be named Neil. And Armstrong says to Gaiman, he says to him, you know, I feel like such an imposter being in this room. All of these interesting creative people are everywhere. And what have I really done? I just went where I was sent. I just went where I was sent. If the first man who's walked on the moon feels that way, any one of us are allowed to feel that way. Any one of us. It turns out imposter syndrome is as common as a cold. Anyone can catch it. It can strike at any time. But you can also get over it. In fact, 70% of people, ones who've actually confessed and raised their hands, have suffered from imposter syndrome at some point or another. I've suffered across 4 industries. So if you think you're impostoring, I've impostered 4 times more, most likely. I am a published author. I'm convinced that I should not be a published author. I don't have an English degree. I can barely write a text message without typos. What am I thinking that I'm a published author? It's been 12 years. I'm still convinced no one's going to read any of my books, and people are going to say, Donna, you need to stop doing this. I've been a software engineer for 17 years. I'm convinced I'm going to go back to work tomorrow. My badge is not going to work. They're going to realize that girl cannot code. Convinced. I'm a public speaker. I'm convinced that any moment now, this floor is going to drop out, and they're going to say, time's up. You are bad. Bad. I'm an emerging fashion designer. I'm absolutely convinced that no one is going to buy the line that I'm launching this year. And despite people telling me, you look great, I love what you're wearing, they're all lying to me. They're all lying to me, everyone. So now that I feel like a fraud, I'm going to make all of you feel like frauds. I'd love for you to raise your hand if the following statements resonate. There's a mistake in the process, and I slipped in under the radar. Yep, look around. Who's raising their hands? Very good. I'm not as good as the people around me. Lots of hands for that one. No one feels like they're as good as the people around them. That good thing that happened, it was dumb luck. I was in the right place at the right time. Yep. And my favorite, any minute now, someone's going to point to me and says, you You're so not qualified to be there. Yep. There's going to be a man with a clipboard who shows up at the door and says, "Get out! Get out! Who let you in? Who let you in?" If you observed, most people are convinced that they're faking it. Most people in this room, this highly qualified room full of people, are convinced they're faking it. So what if I could tell you there's a 12-step spell, a lucky 12-step spell, that can banish your imposter syndrome forever? Who would like to hear that? Yeah? All right, see, these are like unashamed hands now. Step 1 is acknowledging it, is not being afraid of it, is realizing this is a real feeling. Bearing it and acting like, oh no, I don't feel this way, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. Acknowledging that this is indeed how I'm feeling. I will walk you through an exciting journey where I once got on a plane to Nigeria with no plan whatsoever. So I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. We make products for everyone in the world, everyone, 7.6 billion. Unfortunately, we don't actually know how to make products for outside the US or Western Europe. We're just not aware of how emerging markets use technology. So my business partner, my marketing counterpart, Jeremiah, that's him in the picture, he's brilliant. He's worked in the Peace Corps, he's worked at the UN, very worldly person. He says, I know, let's do an entrepreneurship boot camp in Nigeria. And I said, what? And mind you, I don't leave Redmond except to go to iStates and Square States, okay? Just keep this in mind. So I said, what? And he said, well, we know that Nigeria is one of the most entrepreneurial places on earth. 80% of people there resonate with being called an entrepreneur. They have 180 million people, and the population's quite young. It's an ideal place to do an entrepreneurship bootcamp. When we observe entrepreneurs for a course of 6 months, we'll find out what kind of tech they need. That way we'll learn a lot and we'll be able to help them with starting their businesses, turning ideas into profitable businesses. And I said, oh, that's actually a great idea. Internally, I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. This is a horrible idea. But I can't say no because then I'll look stupid. So I just nod and smile and I'm like, cool, we should do this. This sounds like a wonderful plan. Panic, panic. So the next step for me was figuring out, if we don't do this, if I specifically don't do this and I offload this to someone else because I'm impostering, what do I lose out on? And the answer was simple. This is a map of the usage of Microsoft products that's very active usage. So these are people who give us feedback on our pre-release products. As you can see, there's a giant, giant opportunity there on the continent of Africa. There's also a lot of opportunity in South America and in Russia. But we realized, oh, Africa has the most potential because there's 1 billion people there, and we know they're all tech first because they're quite young. If we don't go there, we will miss out on the opportunity to help and learn from 1 billion people. That's not a risk I'm willing to take, so I don't want to lose out on this opportunity. My FOMO kicked in, and I said, all right, I will do this. Next was figuring out, what do others lose out on if you don't do this thing? Remove yourself from the equation. And I realized that there's so many people who would lose out on trying what I was working on at the time, which is HoloLens. It's a mixed reality headset. It's putting holograms in your real world. And I love this product, and I love sharing it with everyone I meet. And if I didn't take it with me to Nigeria, there's so many people who would never get to try it for many years. So I decided I don't want them to miss out on this. I want these entrepreneurs to realize there's so many ways to start businesses using augmented and mixed reality. So didn't want them to lose out. Next thing was actually break it down. Out of all of the things you feel unqualified to do, what are you qualified to do? So say there's this huge statement, do an entrepreneurship bootcamp. What does that even mean? It probably means doing a series of sessions and courses on various topics. I thought, okay, what can I actually give a talk on without sounding like a moron? One, tech. I happen to know a lot about tech. I can talk about tech all day long. I can do that. Customer engagement. I do lead a community of 16 million people all over the world who are our top customers. I can definitely talk about how to engage with customers. And three, making a fool of myself in public. I am now an expert at this. So if anyone wants to learn to give a pitch in front of people, I can teach them to do that. So I thought, okay, I am qualified to do these things, but it's not enough. What am I not qualified to do? And this is the part that's not fun. This is the part we dread, where we have to make the list of things that we cannot do. And we're convinced we cannot do, not because of impostoring, but because fundamentally we've never had the experience. The reason you're generally impostering, as I do, is because there's one or two things you cannot do that you let overwhelm the entire story. And once you're able to isolate what those one or two things are, it really brings a lot of clarity as to what you're dreading. For me, it was finances. It was calculating cost. It was calculating profit and loss. It was figuring out break even. I didn't know what any of these words meant. I'm a software engineer. I've never had to worry about this before. I used to think an opex was a small sub-Saharan endangered animal. Those of you who are laughing are econ people. Everyone not laughing is like, I thought that's what an opex was too. See? Yeah. Now, once you identify the things you're not qualified to do, you feel a lot better because you realize that list is not that long. That list is not infinite. In the scope of this project that you're trying to do, that list is finite. Then you identify who is qualified to do all these mysterious things that you can't do. Once you identify those humans, people in your life who might be friends of yours, who might be friends of theirs, who are qualified. And once you understand that these are real humans who can do these things, then you start figuring out, how did they get there? How did they become an expert? Was it through magical osmosis by unicorns? No. It's probably because they've done the work to learn these skills over the course of many years. They've probably started businesses. They probably work in finance. They've probably mentored people. This is how this lovely group of people who I gathered, coerced, convinced, blackmailed, came together to help me learn all of these skills around business, finance, what the heck an OPEX is, how do you spell OPEX, etc. So what I did was I decided I could drag them all along with me, or I can learn some of these skills so I stop feeling like a complete imposter. And I realized something about myself, which is the quickest way for me to learn anything is to have a deadline on it. And the sooner that deadline, the sooner I will learn something. I'm not going to learn to start and run a business within Microsoft itself because it's a huge company. But I can start and run a business of my own in the 6 weeks I have before it's time to get on a plane. How do I do that? I've been thinking about starting my own fashion line for years, for about a decade, but I've always been way too chicken because I don't know anything about finances. So I put it aside. And at this moment, I realized I can't put it aside anymore. It's time. I have to do it. So I know a lot about sewing and designing, but I don't know anything about manufacturing. I don't know anything about pricing something. How do you price something? How do you charge someone for something? How do you take payments? And how do you ship stuff? Hell if I know. But with 6 weeks left, I figured it out really, really quickly. And it was not perfect. And it was not beautiful. But by the end of it, I knew how to calculate my costs, figure out how to calculate how much I could charge for things. I had figured out how much overhead things are. I figured out what a break-even is. I actually understood all of these concepts because I had to. I read, I researched, I talked to people with a very specific project in mind. And by the end of it, I stopped feeling like such a fraud. I didn't feel like an expert, but I stopped feeling like I didn't even belong in the room. I realized what I knew now what I did not know. Then was the part where I had to reach out to people where I just didn't have enough skills to carry this work. And experts love to share. They love to share their work. It's their life's work. Of course they want to share it. They've put so much work into it. So as I asked these folks to help, I started elevating them. I started saying, they are the best person I know at investing. My partner, Jeremiah, is the best person I know at debugging and understanding a business plan and figuring out exactly how you're going to make money. My friend Femi is an expert at identifying incubators in Nigeria that we can work with. And when you start elevating powerful people, you become powerful because you realize that powerful people love being elevated. No one hates a compliment. No one hates a compliment. Even people who are best in the world feel the sense of imposter where they're convinced someone's going to call them out. So when they're elevated, they really like you. And they really feel like they're validated. Plus, just keep in mind that it takes way more strength to pull someone up than to push them down. So the more you lift people up, the more powerful you become. The next thing we did was we did a small experiment. And that experiment, we wanted to do while in Seattle itself. What we didn't want to do is show up to run a boot camp in Nigeria. No one shows up at the boot camp. We're probably going to get fired if we did this. So what is a small experiment you can do to test your learning and your teams? Ours was, let's make an application, see if anyone even signs up. It's low key. So we made an application. We asked all the questions. What is your business? Do you need help? Which sections do you need help with? Are you willing to commit 6 months, et cetera? And we amplified that application on our social media platforms, and we closed it and quickly went home. We thought, okay, we can't look. What if no one signs up? We're gonna look like idiots. That's okay, we'll pretend it never happened and forget the whole thing. So we come back 24 hours later, we open the application, 5,000 responses. 5,000 responses in Nigeria from young people saying, please come here, please teach us what you know, we're so excited. We said, I guess we're committed. I guess we're doing this. So we get on a plane. And after 20 hours, we arrive in Lagos, Nigeria, one of the busiest, most incredible cities in the world. If you ever get a chance to go to the city. It will change your life. We start our boot camp. Day 2, a young woman named Brenda comes over and sits with me. And she said, I'm gonna tell you something I've never told anyone. And I said, please, I love this. And she said, I'm a new mother, and I'm building a women's healthcare app because I realize there's so many healthcare needs of women in Africa that we don't talk about or cover. But I am so not qualified, Dona, to start this business. I'm not a tech person like you. I'm not a business person like Jeremiah. Who am I to create this product? And I immediately put my hand on my hip and I say, Brenda, you have qualified for this fellowship. You're a new mother. You've given birth to a human child. You can do anything you want. The passion can't be learned. You have the passion for this problem. The tech and business, of course you can learn. I learned the business last week. You can learn it. You can learn it. And she said, are you sure? And I say, Brenda, I assure you, you got this. And Jeremiah is sitting one chair over and says, someone should take their own advice, I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, I get it. The way you talk to others, that's how you should talk to yourself. If a random person after this runs up to you in the parking lot and says, hey, I want to start a taco truck, man, it's going to be awesome. You'll say, oh, okay, what kind of taco truck? Is it going to be carnitas or adobada? And you'll start asking them questions and trying to help them because you're convinced that the crazy person on the corner can probably do the thing. You're convinced. But if you decide you're going to start a business, you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure how to set up a website on day 1. But why are we so critical of ourselves in a voice that we would never, ever, ever be critical of anyone else in our entire lives? So my advice to everyone who struggles with this is, what advice would you give someone else? Do that. Don't question it, just do that. Once we survived through this whole entire escapade unscathed without corrupting any of the youth in Nigeria, I realized what I need are people to yell at me. And I'm convinced we all need people to yell at us. So I gathered an imposter syndrome tribe. These are all the people in my life who struggle with imposter syndrome. And we have a WhatsApp group where we text each other at all weird hours. We confess over strange things. This is me impostering about giving a talk on imposter syndrome. So you can imagine how meta this is. And within seconds, I get yelled at. Like, I will look at it. I will yell at you. What you need are other people to give you the advice you need to hear, the advice you'd give them, which is, don't be a chicken. You're going to do the thing anyway. You'll be fine. Have this imposter tribe. If you need help creating your imposter tribe, ping me. I'm happy to yell at you. I'm now an expert. And please keep in mind that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Either way, it's going to be a great story. All of the people who've had spectacular failures in their lives, we love them more. We love vulnerable people. We absolutely despise people who are perfect or act like they are because we don't trust them. But those who are vulnerable, who've had many, many learns alongside their many wins, they're the ones we trust, we believe, and we follow. We documented our learning in this book called Model 47, a startup storybook. And we told the story of these 46 amazing people that we worked with to turn their ideas into profit. And then we started our 47th business together, which is our own, where we go around the world and talk to people about overcoming imposter syndrome, getting out of their comfort zone, and doing the thing. And this has resonated so well with audiences everywhere we've gone that we've been asked to come to Colombia, in South America, and do a fellowship, do an entrepreneurship boot camp. And that means I need to learn Spanish. So if I'm not able to give this talk in Spanish by June 1st, we have problems. I invite you to use the spell as you choose, as prescribed or in whatever doses make sense to you. And please keep in mind that I've fooled people for 17 years across 4 industries, and I can tell you with the greatest of confidence, no one's gonna point at you and say, you don't belong here. I am 100% convinced that you got this. Thank you.